Hi there, and welcome to part 3 of A Feast for Crows Explained. If you haven't watched part 1 and 2 yet, please click the link above. Now, picking up from where we left off last time, chapter 31. Upon reaching the Quiet Isle, Brienne and her companions are taken up the path to see the elder brother. Brienne mentions to the brother guiding them that she is heading for Salt Pans to kill the hound. This takes the man aback, but he tells them to speak to their elder. They see a huge horse in their stables, obviously a warhorse, who has mauled 2 of the brothers, stranger. On a hill, they pass a huge cloaked novice digging graves. The man appears lame, but they cannot see his face. The elder brother speaks further of the horrible raid on Salt Pans, made worse by the fact that Sir Quincy Cox hid behind his castle walls and did nothing to help the villagers. After dinner, the elder brother speaks in private with Brienne. He asks what she seeks in Salt Pans, and when she mentions a high-born girl, the elder lets on that it is the wrong Stark she seeks. For the hound captured Arya. Shocked that both of Lady Catelyn's daughters may yet be alive, she is equally surprised when he informs her that Sandor Clegane is dead. The elder brother has buried his corpse himself and left the hound's head helm on the grave. It was some other outlaw who found and wore it when they raided Salt Pans. He goes on to tell her that he took pity on Sandor before he died, and will only say that he is at rest when she asks if he is truly dead. The elder brother then tells her that he was once a knight who fought for Prince Rhaegar at the Trident. He took several terrible wounds in the battle and fell into the river, yet awoke upon the shores of the Quiet Isle. He urges her not to be another casualty of this war, and return home. Brienne breaks down and cries, telling him her story, finishing with, "I have to try to save her, or die in the attempt." Chapter 32. Margaery is fuming at Cersei and her council that the throne must respond at once to the Ironmen's attack on the Shield Islands. Cersei does not appreciate her tone, and claims that it must fall to Highgarden to retake these rocks. Loras Tyrell interjects as his sister cedes, stating that his brothers Willis and Garland have the men but not the ships to win back the islands. He requests that Cersei pull Lord Redwyne's fleet from their siege of Dragonstone, so they may return to gather troops at the Arbor. The Queen Regent denies his request, implying that the Redwyne fleet would not depart until Dragonstone fell, knowing that Lord Paxter intended to starve them out. Sir Loras asks leave to lead the assault, and promises Cersei Dragonstone within a fortnight. Pleased by this unexpected gift, Cersei grants him permission. Returning to her apartments, Pycelle objects to her sending Loras, but Cersei is hoping the knight will die besieging the walls of Dragonstone. But if not, she would still strike a blow against Stannis. When she meets Qyburn, he mentions that he has a champion to replace Loras should he fall. Cersei is not so sure of Qyburn's paragon, and informs him that the smiths she's hired believe the weight of the armor he requested cannot be borne by a human. Later, in bed, Lady Tanya asks her certain questions. Cersei becomes concerned the woman may report her answers to Margaery, but Tanya assures her that all her secrets are safe. However, their chat is interrupted by a guard pounding on her door with word that Felice Stokeworth begged to see her. Cersei finds the woman battered and listens to the tale of her husband's death after Bronn defeated him in single combat. But before killing him, Bronn forced Sir Bauman to confess who put him up to this. Bronn then told Felice to leave immediately or meet the same fate. When Felice told her mother's guards to arrest Bronn, they laughed and told her to listen to Lord Stokeworth. Fearful that Felice would spread rumours of Cersei's involvement, Cersei summons Lord Qyburn so that he could take another female subject to his lab in the Black Cells. Back in her room, a very inebriated Cersei contemplates how to deal with Bronn, and then begins to fondle Tanya the way Robert would do to her when he was drunk. Chapter 33. Reaching the camps besieging Riverrun, Jaime meets with his cousin Sir Davin. The new Warder of the West spits when he hears it was Vargo Hoat who had Jaime's hand amputated. Davin reveals how much the phrase are vexing him, and even their own uncle Aemon Frey is trying his patience, complaining that he doesn't want his new seat destroyed by a siege. Worst of all is Sir Ryman, who keeps tying a noose around Edmure Tully's neck each morning, threatening the Blackfish that he means to hang him unless Riverrun surrenders. However, the Blackfish has long exposed Ryman's threat to be empty. They speak of Lancel and his abandonment of Darry, which reminds Jaime of the looks on Amy Frey's family's faces when Lancel made his intentions clear. He is all too aware of how Lord Walder deals with those who break Frey marriage proposals. Davin tells the Lord Commander that their uncle Kevin passed through the camps heading west. He also mentions that Edmure's wife, Roslyn, is pregnant, and oddly, she is fond of the disposed Lord of Riverrun. He also tells Jaime of Lord Gawain Westerling, constantly hounding him to rescue his wife and children, who are being held captive by Brendan Tully. Jaime is perturbed to learn how little help they are receiving from the bannermen of the Tullys who bent the knee to the Iron Throne after the Red Wedding. He realizes that he must secure Riverrun quickly to put down any threat of rebellion. Starving them out would take far too long. The next morning, Jaime is considering a parley with Sir Brendan and recalls when he was a squire of Summer Craycolt, sent to Riverrun with a message. Lord Hoster seated Jaime next to Lysa, but the young man was far more interested in Lysa's famous uncle, the Blackfish. Within sight of the walls of Riverrun, Jaime has his tent pitched and soon receives a visit from his aunt Jenna and her husband, Aemon Frey. Jenna is still a Lannister through and through, with the wit and sharp tongue also shared by all of Lord Tywin's children. Jaime lies to them that their son Cleos died bravely, and then listens to Aemon's complaints about a siege before enlightening Aemon to the fact that he was named Lord of Riverrun. But Peter Baelish is the Lord Paramount of the Trident. Aemon is outraged to learn he is a vassal of Peter, but Jaime is unconcerned, as there is nothing he can do about it, and Cersei won't indulge someone like Aemon Frey. Jenna tells Aemon to leave so she can speak in private with her nephew. Lady Jenna makes it known how she feels about Cersei rearming the Faith, namely that the decision is idiotic, given the trouble the Faith militant caused the Targaryens before they were finally put down and disbanded. Cersei's choice of counsellors, in particular rejecting her brother Kevan as Hand, and Lancel's foolish decision to leave behind his lordship. When Jaime remarks that he plans to treat with Sir Brendan, his aunt tells him that he would be better off beheading Edmure, but Jaime feels this may further the Blackfish's resolve, and would sooner assault the walls of Riverrun if a parley will not work. At last, they discuss Lord Tywin, and Jaime asks her if she loved her eldest brother. Lady Jenna tells him how it was Tywin, a boy of only 10, who objected to their Lord Father's decision to wed the 7-year-old Jenna to Aemon Frey, who was not even the heir to the twins. For that alone, she loved him, stating, "Every little girl needs a big brother to protect her. Who will protect us now?" When Jaime insists that he is his father's son, his aunt replies, "You smile like Geryon and fight like Tig. And there's some of Kevan in you, else you would not wear that cloak. But Tyrion is Tywin's son, not you." Chapter 34. Acclimated to the routine of the Cat of the Canals, Arya is learning the Braavosi tongue and trying to learn 3 new things every time she is sent out from the House of the Black and White, as the kindly man told her she must. Selling clams by day, she sleeps in a bed with Brusco's daughters by night. And for 3 days during each black moon, she returns to the House of Black and White. She delivers all 3 things the kindly man wants her to learn. But he still sends her back to Brusco. He tells her of the many-faced God, especially how all religions are aware of him, even if they do not worship him. Even within the 7, there exists the stranger, whom the kindly man calls him of many faces. One night, when the black moon begins, she meets Darion after he departs the Happy Port. Arya is angered by the singer's abandoning his vows as a black brother. Returning to Brusco's, she gives him the coin she has collected from selling his mollusks and a pair of new boots, then heads to the House of Black and White for 3 nights. The waif teaches her how to identify certain poisons like sweet sleep and the tears of Lys, and then tells her the full story of how she came to the temple. She claims to be the eldest child from an ancient house, but when her stepmother had a true daughter, the woman tried to poison the waif. When her father discovered this, he delivered 2/3 of his wealth to the House of Black and White, and soon after, his new wife was dead, and the waif now a servant in the temple. She reveals that she lied about the part of that tale, but before Arya can guess which part, the kindly man visits her. She tells him the 3 new things she has learned, finishing with the knowledge that Darion is dead. His throat was slit and his body dumped in the canal. When the kindly man asks who killed him, she replies, Arya of House Stark. The priest again asks her who she is, to which she answers, no one. But as always, he tells her she lies, then asks the waif to bring Arya some warm milk to help her sleep. Arya goes to bed, but upon awakening in the morning, she discovers that she is blind. Chapter 35. The Cinnamon Wind is somewhere off the coast of Dorne, as Sam leads a prayer service to mourn the passing of Aemon Targaryen. Zondo's information on the 3 dragons had given Maester Aemon second wind, but it was not enough. Sam recalls some of the ancient Maester's words during the sea voyage from Braavos. No one ever looked for a girl. It was a prince that was promised. Rhaegar, I thought. The error crept in from the translation. Dragons are neither male nor female. Daenerys is the one, born amidst salt and smoke. Lady Melisandre has misread the signs. Stannis has some of the dragon blood in him, yes. Rhael, Egg's little girl, she was how they, the Baratheons, came by it. They must send her a maester. Daenerys must be counselled, taught, protected. Aemon begged Sam to convince the Archmaesters of this, and later rambled some of the following, perhaps prophetic, lines. A glass candle that could not be lit. Eggs that would not hatch. The Sphinx was the riddle, not the Riddler. Gilly and Sam sit together after the eulogy, drinking rum. Gilly points out that had Aemon remained on the wall, Melisandre might have sacrificed him for his king's blood. Jon must have known this and sent the old maester, as well as Dala's boy, to save them from the Red Woman's fires. Gilly then says that she will name the boy Aemon Steelsong once he reaches the age of 2. Below decks, Sam and Gilly have sex, although he is consumed by guilt for breaking his vows. Afterwards, Sam tries to avoid Gilly, but Koja corners him and tells him that what he and Gilly did was considered holy in the Summer Islands, a way of honouring the dead by celebrating life. Koja advises Sam that Gilly knows they can never be a man and wife. But there was nothing wrong with them comforting each other on the long journey. Sam is persuaded, but perhaps it is because Koja threatens to throw him overboard if he does not continue sleeping with Gilly. Chapter 36. Lord Aurene Waters has returned from Dragonstone with news that the fortress has fallen. This was good news indeed, considering that word from the Reach mentioned the Ironmen raiding the Arbor and pushing towards Old Town. Aurene indicates that Sir Loras was previously wounded during the assault, and lays dying after having boiling oil poured on him from the walls. He also holds Loras responsible for turning the battle into a massacre, as thousands of the crowned soldiers died in the storming of Dragonstone's keep, many of them knights or lords. Ecstatic, Cersei delivers the news personally to Margaery. The young queen is appalled by Cersei's description of the fate of her brother, and commands Cersei to get out of her quarters. Back in her solar, 4 separate men bring word on a dwarf sighting, and one brings her a head. However, none of them bear word related to Tyrion, and Cersei sends them away in frustration. Later, in court, Cersei must deal with several unimportant pleas. Then Septon Reynard arrives. Furious that the High Septon himself did not come before her, she scoffs at his words that the Faith is trying to abolish the brothels in the city. Pycelle brings word that Lord Giles may not live much longer, but Cersei demands that the Grand Maester do his utmost to keep the old man alive. At dinner with her son, Tommen mentions that Margaery has been urging him to attend court, to which Cersei responds how much she'd like to see the young queen's tongue torn out. Tommen yells at his mother, and as punishment for his outburst, she commands Sir Boros to oversee the lashing of the boy king's whipping boy by Tommen himself, rather than by a knight. During the night, Cersei dreams of her visit to the witch back when she was 10 years old. She vividly recalls Maggie the Frog's plea they leave her. But Cersei and Melara will not back down. Maggie commands them to cut open their thumbs, and the old Easterner tastes their blood. She prophesied that Cersei would marry the king, not the prince as Cersei thought, but her husband would father 16 children and Cersei only 3, and that she would reign as queen. Only until there comes another, younger and more beautiful, to cast you down and take all that you hold dear. Gold shall be their crowns and gold their shrouds. And when your tears have drowned you, the Valancourt shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat and choke the life from you. Maggie also warns that Melara will die very soon, and true enough, she drowns in a well shortly after. Waking from the nightmare, she sends for Pycelle to make her a potion that permits sleep without dreams. She asks him if seeing the future is possible, but the Maester evades answering by saying, "Should our morrows be foretold?" And to that I should answer, no. Some doors are best left closed. Aggravated, she sends for Qyburn, first asking if Felice could still be used to root out Bronn, but the necromancer tells her it is too late for that. Then she inquires of him the same she had asked of Pycelle. We learn that Maggie was from the Far East and had married a wealthy merchant. Their son was upjumped to a petty lord by Cersei's grandfather. Qyburn tells her that the name Maggie was probably a mispronunciation of Magi, and that blood magic was very powerful. The de-chained Maester suggests that she already knew how to forestall the prophecy. Seizing upon this suggestion, Cersei plans a foolproof way to have Margaery killed, deciding that treason would work best. The next day, she inquires of Sir Osmond if his brother Osnay could defeat Sir Boros in single combat. He replies that it wouldn't even be a match, and wonders if Boros has committed treason. Cersei replies no, but thinks to herself, but Osney has. Chapter 37. Approaching the inn at the crossroads, Brienne's party encounters many corpses hanging from trees, each with a chunk of rock salt in their mouths. They summarize that these were some of the men responsible for the raid on Salt Pans, probably hanged by Lord Beric's outlaw band. Reaching the inn, they meet 4 girls on the porch, and the oldest addresses them. She asks for silver for a night's lodging, stating the only visitors they get are either sparrows or robbers, and worse. When Sir Hyle makes an inquiry regarding her tone, the smith approaches, and Brienne is nearly floored by his resemblance to Renly. Inside, Brienne plans to leave before dawn with Podrick only, although she is unsure where to go. At dinner, Septon Merrybold leads a prayer, but Gendry does not participate and returns to his forge. One of the orphan boys tells the Septon that it is because he worships the Lord of Light. Brienne delivers some food to Gendry and mentions his resemblance to King Robert, but they are interrupted by riders drawing near. Gendry says they are friends, but when Brienne peeks out, she recognizes Baita among the 7 men. The leader, wearing the helm of Sandor Clegane, threatens to kill Willow if she fires her crossbow. Brienne draws Oathkeeper and intercedes. One of the men says that they are wounded and seek only fresh horses, for they are being chased by outlaws. But the large man wearing the hound's helm charges Brienne, remembering her well. She makes short work of him, running him through with Oathkeeper, and whispers sapphires as Rourke dies. But she is blindsided by Baita, who tackles her to the ground. The huge cannibal smashes her in the face, breaking bones, and then shatters her forearm. She hears the sounds of swords clashing in the background, but then Baita takes a bite out of her face. Her last vision is Baita's tongue sticking out, obscenely long, almost like it were a sword. Chapter 38. Sir Jaime and Sir Brendan face each other across the drawbridge to Riverrun, alone for a parley during the siege of Riverrun. The Blackfish is aware of the oath Jaime swore to Catelyn, but the member of the Kingsguard makes it known that he does not have the Stark girls. He offers Edmure Tully in exchange for Lady Sabelle Spicer and her children, but Brendan refuses, telling him he swore to his king to keep his wife safe and won't hand her over to a Frey noose. Jaime responds that the girl has been pardoned and no harm will come to her, nor anyone else if Brendan yields Riverrun. They will be free to go or take the Black as they choose. But Brendan dismisses the offer, claiming that he and his men would rather die with swords in their hands than be paraded through King's Landing to die like Eddard Stark. Brendan adds that he is well provisioned for a siege, and the Lannisters and Frey casualties will be far higher than his own if they storm Riverrun. The Blackfish also makes it clear that he believes Lord Tywin had a hand in the Red Wedding, though that will never absolve the Freys for their breach of the sacred laws of hospitality. Jaime challenges the older knight to single combat, with each choosing a champion. When Brendan prods Jaime to face him himself, Jaime cannot help but rise to the bait. But the Blackfish is not so foolish as to trust that Jaime's terms would be honoured. The parley over, Jaime rides back to his camp and calls his captains for a war council, resolved that he must break his vow to Lady Catelyn and storm Riverrun. The Riverland lords, who have bent the knee to the Iron Throne, do not tolerate the Frey's presence at the war council, so Ryman is too drunk to attend. But Edwin and Bastard Walder are present. When confronted by Lord Clement Piper as the condition of his son, Sir Mark, Edwin replies that he is still held at the Twins to ensure that Pink Maiden is truly loyal to the crown. When Bastard Walder and Lord Clement nearly come to blows when Piper challenges Edwin to a duel over a threat to Lord Clement's heir, Jaime silences them, ending the council prematurely. Lord Clement storms out, and Lord Vance explains to Jaime that as well as his firstborn son, several of Lord Clement's cousins and nephews accompanied Mark to the Twins, and are either captives or dead. When Edwin denounces them as traitors and rebels, Jaime coldly retorts that the Freys first rebelled against the crown with Robb Stark and then betrayed him, making them twice the traitors House Piper are. Jaime takes enjoyment out of watching Edwin's smug attitude evaporate at that remark. Summoning Sir Ilan Payne and Sir Lyle Crackle, Jaime heads straight for the Frey camp. He first has Payne cut loose Edmure Tully, and when Edwin and his father, Sir Ryman, come forth to protest, he warns them to keep quiet. When Ryman persists, stating that he is the heir to the crossing, Jaime punches him in the face with his golden hand and dismisses Ryman back to the Twins. Sick of the man's whoring and drinking, and takes the bladed crown that his whore wears. When Jaime places Edwin in charge of the Freys, Jaime witnesses a glimpse of the content Edwin feels for his own father. Jaime also demands that Lord Walder release all the hostages that he has imprisoned at the Twins. Jaime asks that Sir Ryman's singer accompany him back to his pavilion, and has his squires draw a bath for Edmure. Jaime informs Edmure that he can be returned to Riverrun forthwith, and if he yields the castle, all will end well for him. The terms are that the small folk can stay and serve Lord Emmon Frey. Sir Brendan will be permitted to take the Black along with any of the garrison who choose the same, and Edmure and his pregnant wife Roslyn will be well-treated prisoners at Casterly Rock. If their child is a boy, Jaime says he will serve House Lannister as a page and squire, and they will grant the boy some lands when he gets his knighthood. If it is a girl, the Lannisters will make sure she has a good dowry when she is old enough to wed. When Edmure asks what will happen should he refuse to yield, so Jaime indicates that he will assault Riverrun's walls in waves. The ex-Tully bannermen will attack first as fodder, followed by the Freys, and finally his cousins Westermen. After the castle falls, Jaime will see that Riverrun is demolished and put all within its walls to the sword. Jaime also delivers a personal threat. Should Roslyn give birth before the siege is lifted, he will deliver the child to Edmure within the castle by trebuchet. As Jaime leaves the tent, commanding Ryman's singer to play The Rains of Castamere for Edmure, the former Lord of Riverrun pleads, "No, not him. Get him away from me." Chapter 39. With Pycelle prostrate before her, Cersei accuses him of letting Giles Rosby die, because she believes He is now taking orders from Margaery. The Grand Maester denies this, explaining that he visits the young queen to give her sleeping potions, but Cersei knows otherwise, forcing a confession from him that he also brings Margaery moon tea. She then commands him to announce that Lord Rosby's dying wish was to donate all his lands and incomes to the crown. Lady Tanya wonders how Margaery could be so foolish, but Cersei is too excited to care. She does realize that she will need more proof in order to have Margaery executed for treason, knowing that she must arrange to have the girl caught in the act. She asks Tanya and her husband to bring the Blue Bard to dinner that night. During the meal, Cersei demotes Sir Harry Swift to Lord Treasurer, and with the position of hand now vacant, she offers the title to Lord Orton Merryweather. Lord Orton accepts, although he is notably uncomfortable during the dinner, particularly due to the presence of Margaery's favourite singer. Cersei wastes little time moving on to the Blue Bard, accusing him of sleeping with Queen Margaery. The singer denies it, despite Cersei smashing him in the face with his own lute, and even later in the black cells under interrogation by Qyburn. But the defrocked Maester tortures the singer into submission, and they lead him to say what they want. He accuses several others of also having carnal knowledge of Margaery, and then Cersei promises that he'll be allowed to take the black after he confesses it in front of the court. Later, Tanya persuades Cersei to name Alla as innocent, since they may be able to use her to bear witness against Margaery and her other cousins. At breakfast, Tommen mentions that Margaery will be at the Sept for Maiden's Day. Cersei then launches the final move of her scheme, commanding Sir Osney to go before the High Septon and admit his sins of bedding Margaery, Eleanor, and Megha. The youngest Kettleblack agrees to do so, but states the best lies have some truth in them to give him flavour. So the Queen Regent then allows him to have his way with her. Chapter 40. Arianna is imprisoned atop the Spear Tower, forced to contemplate her failed scheme. She never expected someone to inform her father of the plan, nor for Hotar to intercept them, and certainly not Gerald Dane's unprovoked attack on Myrcella. Dane escaped from Hotar's men, but he left a terrible scar on Myrcella's face, barely missing a beheading stroke, as was his intent. Thinking her father would see her within a day, Arianna becomes distraught as days turn into weeks, and although servants come and go with food, none will speak to her. She considers who could have betrayed her, ponders her feeling at the loss of Sir Aerys, and thinks of her close relationship with Tyene. She eventually persuades the young serving girl, Cedra, to deliver a letter to Lord Fowler, knowing that the girl has feelings for Garren, who, Arianna assumes, is also being imprisoned along with her other co-conspirators. But the next day, Cedra does not return, and Arianna never sees her again during her imprisonment. After an immediate period of agonized waiting, Areo Hotar arrives to bring her before her father. Prince Doran asks her why, to which Arianna replies, "For the honor of our house." The prince tells her they have not caught Dane, but the damage he did to Myrcella, a ward of their house, has done naught but bring the Martells dishonor. He cautions her that a war with the Iron Throne is the last thing they need. Although the young dragon wrote that Dorne was populous, his memoirs were written to portray himself in a better light. Prince Doran admits that Dorne is actually the least populous of the Seven Kingdoms and could not survive open war with the throne. He admits it was a mistake not to have her taken prior to running off with Myrcella, but will not reveal who betrayed her. When he tells her that she disappoints him, Arianna retorts, "You have been disappointing me for years, father." Prince Doran discloses that none of her co-conspirators are imprisoned. Instead, he has sent Sir Alden Dort to Norvos to serve Arianna's mother. Garren is in Tyrosh for 2 years, and Sylvia was sent to Greenstone to marry Lord Eldon Estermont. He goes on to remark that Arianna and her cousins may get the war they wanted, as Sir Balon Swan is on his way to Sunspear. The prince has several of his bannermen stalling him, but eventually Sir Balon will discover that his brother in the Kingsguard, Sir Aerys, is dead, and Myrcella maimed. Arianna continues to taunt her father, and he cautions her that he is out of patience. But the princess is unimpressed, remarking, "For Lord Tywin, you always had the forbearance of Baelor the Blessed, but not for your own blood. None." He responds, "You mistake patience for forbearance. I have worked at the downfall of Tywin Lannister since the day they told me of Elia and her children." When Arianna tells him that she wants her rights to Dorne, Prince Doran finally reveals that she will have the kingdom when he passes. Arianna divulges that she knew of his scheme to make Quentyn his heir, but her father tells her that he had other plans for her. He offered her hand to old men because he knew she would rebuke them. But he had to be seen as trying. All along, he had promised her to Prince Viserys, but now that the last male Targaryen is dead, he has no reason to deny her right to Dorne. He finishes by saying, "We princes make our careful plans, and the gods smash them all awry." His original plan was to send her to Tyrosh to serve as the Archon's cupbearer, where she could meet her betrothed in secret, while her brother, Quentyn, was being raised to assume the seat of their house. Finally, he reveals why her brother is overseas, to bring back their heart's desire. When Arianna asks what that is, her father replies, "Vengeance, justice, fire, and blood." Chapter 41. Elaine has been trying to coax a petulant Lord Robert to get dressed for the long descent to the Gates of the Moon. With winter fast approaching, the high seat of the Arryns will soon become inhospitable, and the entire staff is retreating for the valley floor. Her father is away at the wedding of Lord Lionel Corbray, who supports the Lord Protector along with several other Vale lords, including, just recently, Lord Bendar Belmore. Maester Coleman is concerned that Robert is being given sweet sleep too often, as it is poisonous over time. However, he sees no other way to get the boy down the mountain without a seizure. After riding the basket down to Skye, Elaine and the rest of the household begin their descent on mules, led by Maya Stone. Accompanying them is Lady Miranda Royce, Lord Nestor's daughter. Randa is a natural gossip, and tells Elaine that Lady Waynwood and Sir Simon Templeton both showed at Lord Corbray's wedding, and that Riverrun has yielded, but not Dragonstone or Storm's End. Elaine is careful with her words around the very clever Randa, although she stumbles when the woman mentions that Lord Eddard's bastard now commands the Night's Watch. She thinks to herself, it would be sweet to see her half-brother once more. Randa discloses that Harry the Heir was recently knighted at a tourney, but Miranda doesn't like him because Lady Waynwood denied Lord Nestor's attempt to marry Randa to Harry. She also lets on that he has a bastard daughter despite his young age. Their banter turns to Maya and how her beloved Sir Michael Redfort recently married one of Lord Yon's daughters. Elaine reveals that Sir Lothar Brune likes Maya, but doesn't believe that the bastard daughter of Robert Baratheon is aware. After a rough stretch crossing a gorge, where Elaine has to carry a shaking Robert across, the party reaches the Gates of the Moon. She discovers that her father has returned from the east, and she goes to see him immediately. Lord Peter is entertaining 3 hedge knights he recently hired for his household, one of whom is none other than Sir Shedrick of the Shady Glen. Dismissing them, Peter imparts word of Cersei's spiraling downfall, saying, "It is quite vexing. I had hoped to have 4 or 5 quiet years to plant some seeds and allow some fruits to ripen, but it is a good thing that I thrive on chaos. What little peace and order the 5 kings left us will not long survive the 3 queens, I fear." But he will not explain what he meant by 3 queens. Peter then announces that he has a present for her, a marriage contract to Harry the Heir. He tells her that she first must win his approval before they are even betrothed, hopefully giving them enough time for Tyrion to perish, allowing her to marry again. Lady Waynwood agreed to the proposal because, despite Elaine's low birth, she is nonetheless the daughter of the Lord Protector, not to mention that House Waynwood is heavily in debt, much of it now owed to Littlefinger. When Elaine asks how, the young knight could be Lady Anya's heir when she has 3 sons, as well as daughters and grandsons. He tells her that Harry is actually Lord Robert's heir. He explains that Lord Jon Arryn's sister married a Waynwood, and her only son perished at age 3. but their youngest daughter married a knight of House Harding, who are landed knights sworn to Iron Oaks, and begot a son, now Sir Harold Harding. Besides Lord Robert, he is the only living male heir to the Arryns, since he is Lord John's great-nephew. When Elaine learns the truth, she utters, "If Robert were to die," to which Lord Peter replies, "When Robert dies, Harry the heir becomes Lord Harold, Defender of the Vale and Lord of the Eyrie. John Arryn's bannermen will never love me, nor our silly, shaking Robert. But they will love their young falcon. And when they come together for his wedding, and you come out, clad in a maiden's cloak of white and grey with a dire wolf embezzled on the back, why, every knight in the Vale will pledge his sword to win you back your birthright. So those are your gifts from me, my sweet Sansa. Harry, the Eyrie, and Winterfell." Chapter 42. Brienne fluctuates between a fever dream and semi-consciousness as the Outlaws transport her severely injured body to Lady Stoneheart. While she is being treated by Jane Heddle, Brienne learns that Biter is dead, skewered through the head by a spear wielded by Gendry. Lem, now wearing the Hound steel dog helm, tells her that Stoneheart wants her hanged for her crimes. Brienne fully awakens in a cave where she meets Thoros of Myr. The Red Priest is a ghost of his former self, and he informs her about the current state of the former Brotherhood without banners. Lord Beric's fire has gone out of this world. A grimmer shadow leads us in his place. War makes monsters of us all. Before long, Brienne is brought before Lady Stoneheart, where she, as well as Pod and Sir Hyle, will be judged. Brienne cannot see Stoneheart's face, but notices her holding a bronze crown ringed by iron swords. A Northman, most likely Harwin, places Oathkeeper before Stoneheart, along with Brienne's writ signed by King Tommen. The Outlaws see this as infutable proof that the Maid of Tarth is about Lannister business. Her words are wasted here, as her pleas of innocence fall on deaf ears. Finally, Lady Stoneheart speaks, needing to place her hand over her throat in order to gurgle out her judgment. Upon removing her head, Brienne is horrified to discover that the hangwoman is actually Lady Catelyn Stark, albeit now a spectre from the grave. Thoros reveals that it was Lord Beric himself who administered the kiss of life to her, finally extinguishing his own unnatural life. Stoneheart gives Brienne an ultimatum: kill Sir Jaime Lannister or be hanged. When the maid states that she will not make that choice, the thing that had been Catelyn Stark orders them hanged. Despite Sir Hyle's pleas for mercy and Podrick's stoicism, nooses are looped about all three of their necks, as they are hefted upward, thrashing and dying. Brienne screams out a word. Chapter 43. Accompanied by 6 newly reinstated warriors' son, Septa Moella brings word to the court that Queen Margaery and her cousins have been imprisoned at the Great Sept of Baelor for adultery and high treason. The Septa reveals that Margaery's maidenhead is not intact. Grand Maester Pycelle also reluctantly discloses to the Septa that Margaery has had him mix moon tea on many occasions. Leaving the throne room confident that Margaery was finished, Cersei agrees with Orain Waters' request to launch his new Dromons, in case Mace Tyrell decides to march on King's Landing to save his daughter. Lord Aughton Merryweather remarks that the High Septon may want to try Margaery himself, as the Faith used to do. Cersei hopes he is right. Cersei has Tommen sign some blank warrants, which she then affixes names to. Summoning Sir Osfryd, she orders him to arrest Sir Tallard, the Blue Bard, Hugh Clifton, Mark Mullendore, as well as the Redwyne twins, whom she wants to be found innocent of the charges of bedding Margaery. The next morning, Cersei and Tanya are carried by a litter to the Great Sept. On the way, Tanya inquires, "What if Margaery demands that her innocence be determined by battle?" Cersei smiles and replies that she must be championed by a knight of the Kingsguard, but Sir Osmond is brother to one of her accusers. That leaves only Sir Melantrant and Sir Boris Blount. Cersei states that the former will not be feeling well when the time comes. Within the sept, the High Septon grants Cersei permission to visit her good daughter, while Tanya goes to speak with Margaery's cousins. Margaery is beside herself, stripped of her clothes and dignity, while she is asked once an hour to confess her fornication. Cersei tells her that she has rounded up all those that Sir Osney named, lying that they will reveal her innocence. When Cersei says that a sworn brother of the Kingsguard will fight for her, should it come to trial by combat, Margaery demands that her own brother, Sir Garland, be summoned to fight in the place of the grievously injured Sir Loras. Cersei would never allow this to happen, and Margaery, well aware of Cersei's intentions, tells her to leave, calling her a vile, scheming, evil bitch. Cersei is then escorted deep beneath Visenya's hill to speak with the High Septon. He tells her that 7 will sit in judgment of Margaery and her cousins, as the Faith did in yore, before King Jaehaerys I Targaryen stripped them of this power. When Cersei asks to have Sir Osney released into her custody, the priest flatly denies her. Chained to the ceiling of his cell, Osney has been brutally whipped. Infuriated, Cersei tells the High Septon that Osney came of his own free will. The holy man responds, "I have heard many men confess, but seldom have I heard a man so pleased to be so guilty. The more diligently we applied the scourge, the more Sir Osney's offences seemed to change. He would now have us believe that he never touched Margaery Tyrell." When asked now if he had carnal knowledge of the Queen, Osney points at Cersei, saying, "Hey, that one there." Furthermore, he confesses that Cersei ordered him to kill the old High Septon. Upon hearing this, Cersei bolts from the cell, racing headlong through the Great Sept, fearing what may happen should the Faith question Tanya Merryweather. She is soon overtaken by a group of Septors, who strip her and confine her to a grim cell, her screams going unheard. Cersei begins to shiver from the cold. Every time she begins to fall asleep, she is jolted awake and asked if she will confess her sins. After 2 days of this torture, Qyburn enters her cell. She begs him to take her home, but the dechained maester tells her it will not be allowed, and she will be tried for murder, treason, and fornication. He reveals that Margaery will be tried by the same court, and that he delivered the Blue Bard to the High Septon. But despite the Faith's torture, he is still singing the same sweet song we taught him. Qyburn then informs her of the rapid changes made since her fall. The realm is now being governed by Sir Harry Swift and Pycelle. They removed Sir Osfryd as commander of the Goldcloaks and Qyburn from the small council, though he still works for them thanks to his control of Varys' whisperers. Lord Orton and Tanya have fled to Longtable, while Sir Kevan has been sent for to take over the regency. Perhaps worst of all, Orain Waters unshipped his oars and sailed the fleet, possibly to join Lord Stannis, while Lord Mace Tyrell and Lord Randall Tarly are marching on King's Landing. Despite Qyburn's words that his unbeatable champion is ready, Cersei knows that only a Kingsguard can defend her in a trial by combat. She has Qyburn pen her final plea to her brother. "Come at once. Help me. Save me. I need you as I have never needed you before. I love you. I love you, love you. Come at once." Chapter 44. Aemon Frey, now Lord of Riverrun in fact as well as name, demands Edmure Tully's head, so Jaime will not accede, though he is sorely tempted since Edmure betrayed his confessions by helping his uncle, Sir Brynden, to escape the castle when he turned it over to the Lannisters. Despite a massive search for Lord Hoster's brother, Jaime knows that the Blackfish will not be found, nor will he abandon the fight. Before being escorted west to Castle Rock as a notable prisoner, Sir Edmure speaks his mind. "You'll never know how sick it makes me to see you in this room, Kingslayer. You'll never know how much I despise you." Jaime replies that he has been despised by better men than him. Later, Lady Sabelle Westerling and her daughter, the widow Jane Stark, are brought before Jaime. Jane is in mourning for her husband and defiant to her mother, but when Sabelle moves to slap her, Jaime intervenes and kindly asks Jane to leave the Solar. Jaime confirms to Lady Sabelle that House Westerling has its pardon. Her brother has been named Lord of Casmere, and marriages will be arranged for her daughters, though Jane will have to wait 2 years before marrying again, to prevent rumours that any children she has are actually Robb Stark's. Lady Sibel asked Jaime to inquire after her son, Sir Raynold, who accompanied Robb to the twins, and had no knowledge of the arrangement between his mother and Tywin Lannister. Jaime, suspecting that Raynold is likely dead, as Walder Frey also didn't know of the arrangement, agrees to inquire, promising that House Lannister will pay his ransom if Raynold is held captive. She then mentions that Lord Tywin promised a highborn marriage for him, that Raynold should have Joy of him. When Jaime states that Joy is his uncle Gerron's natural daughter, Sibel shouts, "You want a Westerling to marry a bastard?" Jaime, desiring to strangle the woman with her own necklace, retorts, "No more than I want Joy to marry the son of some scheming turncloak bitch. Your daughter is worth 10 of you, my lady. You'll leave with Edmure and Sir Folly on the morrow. Until then, you would do well to stay out of my sight." He then contemplates how much Lord Gawain knew of his wife's schemes. The following morning, Jaime warns Sir Forley Prester to guard Sir Edmure well, for fear either the Blackfish or Beric Dondarrion might try to free him. The knight is aware of his orders to kill Edmure should he try to slip away. Jaime adds that he should do the same for Jane Stark, stating that she is twice as dangerous as Edmure should she escape. Jaime visits Edwin Frey, who is preparing his army to return to the twins. Edwin divulges that his father, Sir Raymond, along with his entire retinue, were hanged by Lady Stoneheart near Fairmarket. Although Edwin blames Jaime, the Lord Commander is well aware that Edwin couldn't care less that his father is dead, and although Edwin is now heir to the twins, Jaime knows that Blackwater will probably soon move to kill his brother. Jaime's only real concern is that the outlaws must be getting bolder if they are willing to kill Lord Walder's heir only a day's ride from the twins. Jaime takes his leave after inquiring about Sir Raynold's fate. Apparently, Queen Jane's brother was responsible for losing Greywind on the Freys, and was shot full of quarrels before diving into the river. An offhand comment from Jaime about killing those responsible makes the Frey drop their smug attitude about the act. Content that he has taken Riverrun without having to take up arms against the Tullys or Starks, Jaime later agrees to allow Sir Desmond Grell and Sir Robin Rhaegar to take the Black, commanding Rath the Sweetling to escort them to Maidenpool. During Lord Emmond's speech to the people of Riverrun, Jaime speaks with a singer he took from Raymond Frey earlier, Tom of Seven Streams, and tells Jaime that he hopes to play for Lady Jenna and Lord Emmond over the winter. That night, Jaime dreams of his mother, Lady Joanna, whom he barely remembers, but the dream disturbs him when his mother cries and asks who he really is. In the morning, a nervous Maester Vyman delivers Cersei's message written by Qyburn. The old Maester asks if Jaime wishes to respond, but the King's Guard hands the letter to Peck, saying, "No, put this in the fire." Chapter 45. The Cinnamon Wind passes through the Redwind Straits on her way to Old Town. Before they reach their destination, they undergo a customs inspection. The Ironborn now control many of the outlying towns and fortifications surrounding the Arbor and along the Mander nearly to Old Town, having sacked Riamsport and taking Vinetown and Starfish Harbour. They have also been raiding ships in the area. Sam learns that even Old Town is at risk until Lord Paxter Redwyne can bring the fleet back from Dragonstone. Meanwhile, Lord Leighton Hightower has not left his tower in years. While his sons struggle to protect the great city, his youngest son, Sir Humphrey, has sailed to the free cities to hire sail sails or persuade his half-sister, Lyonesse, to loan him some of the Archon of Lys's ships. As Sam prepares to disembark from the Citadel, he considers whether it will be safe for Gilly at Hornhill, since it will only have a small regiment of guards left. Fortunately, Sam knows that Gilly will be safe aboard the Cinnamon Wind, at least until he can learn more of the situation in Old Town. Upon reaching the Seneschal's court, Sam is forced to wait a long while before he will be admitted to speak with the Seneschal. His patience running thin at the delay, Sam is approached by Alleris, who informs him that it will take a penny to get past the acolyte. But when Alaris introduces himself, Sam is taken aback when he learns that the boy is called the Sphinx. Samuel then tells Alaris the story of how he reached Old Town, leaving out only the secrets he has sworn to keep. After hearing all that has transpired, especially Maester Aemon's plea that the Citadel learn of Daenerys, Alaris tells him to forget the Seneschal. The Archmaesters will believe little of what Sam has to say, but there is one who will, Archmaester Marwyn. At the Isle of Ravens, Sam recognizes Leo Tyrell, but before words can be said, Marwyn the Mage appears and ushers Sam and Alaris into his chambers. Marwyn first describes how Valyria used dragon glass for various magical means, noticing Sam's interest in the obsidian candle. Sam then repeats what he told Alaris, stating that Maester Aemon was convinced that Daenerys was the promised one in the prophecy, not Prince Rhaegar or Stannis. To this, Archmaester Marwyn reveals how fickle and treacherous prophecy can be, but he is still intrigued. He makes it clear to Sam that Maester Aemon may have been killed by the Archmaesters had he spoken his mind to them. When Sam inquires why, Marwyn replies, "Who do you think killed all the dragons the last time around? The world the Citadel is building has no place in it for sorcery or prophecy or glass candles, much less for dragons. Ask yourself why Aemon Targaryen was allowed to waste his life upon the wall, when by rights he should have been raised to Archmaester. His blood was why. He could not be trusted, no more than I can." Commanding Alaris to look after Sam, Marwyn makes known his plan to travel to Slaver's Bay, as Maester Aemon had intended. He intends to take the Cinnamon Wind, hoping to reach Daenerys prior to the Grey Sheep, as he calls the other Archmaesters. He advises Sam to work rapidly towards his chain, and to never mention anything of prophecies, dragons, or Daenerys to anyone in the Citadel. Marwyn quickly departs, and Alaris reveals to Sam that their meeting was not happenstance. The mage knew Sam was coming, supposedly from the dragon glass candle. The novice in the room the whole time shows Sam to his quarters, finally divulging his name. "I'm Pate, like the pig boy." And that's it for A Feast for Crows. Thank you for watching, and please check out our playlist on every chapter of A Song of Ice and Fire Explained. Also, when you get the chance, try out Fantasy Flights, a Game of Thrones board game, digital edition.